Hello, we are live, and on today's session here, we're going to talk about comic book anthologies, and actually, you're going to learn 10 commandments for successful comic book anthologies with my special guest today. Thanks to Kickstarter, we are in this golden age of the comic book anthology, but just because you launch an anthology doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a surefire recipe for success. And so I'm really excited to just dive deep into the topics of what makes a blockbuster anthology on Kickstarter. And so in a sec, I'm going to bring on my guest. Before I do that, I would be remiss if I did not give a quick plug to the latest project that we have in the Comics Tribe family, which is live right now. It is Happy Hill number 1 and 2, which is live on Kickstarter right now. This is the shortest Kickstarter launch we've ever done. It's just going to be 10 days only. And the book is already complete, and it's at the printer, and we're just aiming to start shipping by the end of the month. So this is a little bit different. But if you haven't checked out Happy Hill, if you haven't jumped on board this series by Joe Mulvey, Rich Duick, Chris Sotomayor, Hassan lettering, it's tremendous. And so check it out on Kickstarter, Happy Hill number 1 and 2. All right. My plug is out of the way, and that means I get to I've invited, and now I get to introduce my guest today, who is a USA Today bestselling author, publisher, and speaker. He's the author of many, many, many novels, including the Godverse Chronicles and the new Dragon Strife trilogy, the first book of which is on my desk already, and I've been reading it over the past couple of days and enjoying it. He's also written comics including Ichabod Jones, Monster Hunter, Pixie Dust, Katrina Hates the Dead, which have all been graphic novels that have been funded on Kickstarter. And he is also the project creator and editor of the Cthulhu is Hard to Spell, a series of anthologies. He's raised well over $250,000 on Kickstarter, and has many more launches ready to go, and a new one about to launch for the final book in this first wave, or this first trilogy of the Cthulhu is Hard to Spell saga. So welcome back to Comics Launch, Russell Nohelty. How you doing, Russ?
It's great. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. And can I say, like, the 10-day launches are so good. Like, they're so when you can do it, and just, I do a lot of this with novels. And so we do it. We do 10, 14 days. We then have them printed right when they're done. And then we ship them within 2 weeks of it ending. And it's just so good and easy.
Yeah. And, I'll probably do an episode coming up on just the quick and dirty Kickstarter launch. This was, it was a launch where I basically, built and submitted the page on the same day, and was, launching in under a week, which is, not the usual thing for this, but it's like when you've been at this long enough, and also you understand how powerful that Kickstarter's own internal recommendation engine is to get your backers back. It makes a lot of sense, and so I'll be diving deep on that. But I brought you on here to dive deep on anthologies. And comic book anthologies have been a big part of what some of the success that I've had on Kickstarter, and I know they've been a game changer for you and your approach to Kickstarter's launching and how to really build a creative career. And so I'm excited just that you brought this topic. And part of the reason that you brought this topic is because you're pending. You have a pending launch for the next one in the Cthulhu is Hard to Spell series. So before we dive in to the specifics on anthologies in general, you want to just give a quick plug and shout out to the next anthology and what's in store for backers there?
Sure. Let me let my dog out of this room really quickly, as we talked about beforehand.
Yeah, we both discussed how our dogs can be quiet all day, and then once you fire up the old recording for streamers and whatnot, they want to get their 2 cents in. But between Russell and I, there's not enough room for another voice in this podcast.
I think he looked up and was like, "Daddy, you're going to talk about anthologies again? Like, I'm going. I need to go and get comfy somewhere else." So this is the third volume of the Cthulhu is Hard to Spell anthology series, and it is the fourth in our monster anthology series. So we did a monster book about monsters with Monsters and Other Scary-ish in 2017. Then in 2018, we did the first Cthulhu is Hard to Spell book. We followed it up in 2020, in March of 2020, which was real fun. And I'm real like antsy about that part, doing another March launch for this Cthulhu book. And then we're finalizing this trilogy and the series in February 22nd is when the books launch, is when this book launches. 107 stories, almost 500 pages of monster stories.
Yeah, well, it's great to see. You've already been doing a great job getting that project follower count up, 315 followers already, and people can check that out with the great tag of Cthulhu Battle Royale. Is a great easy or memorable thing to find it on Kickstarter, and you can find it we'll include a link to that as well everywhere.
And you can also just go to CthulhuIsHardToSpell.com. But I learned that trick from you, Tyler.
Oh, well, there we go. The old pretty link. Well, I'm excited about this one, in advance of this, as you are always one to be prepared. You sent over some really insightful things about anthologies. But before we dive in, one of the things that I always have to remind myself is that we speak to a lot of creators on this show and on these streamings, and creators come to us from all different frames of reference. So I want to make sure that everyone knows what we're talking about here, and not assume anything. But from your experience, like, what's your definition of an anthology? Like, what counts as an anthology, and why is this a product that you think has been so appealing on the Kickstarter platform?
Sure. So, this is tough because I'm trying to find one that ranges for everything. So it's a series of stories that could be from a single creator or multiple creators that take place over different time periods or from different point of views, and have either different characters or the same characters in different situations.
Okay.
I think that's a pretty good a definition. And there are single creator anthologies. So somebody like when Neil Gaiman did the Graveyard book, it was anthology stories set across one kid's life. There are anthologies with hundreds of people in it, like Love is Love or Puerto Rico Strong or Cthulhu is Hard to Spell. Sort of everything in between. You can have one artist who works with a series of writers, one writer works with a series of artists, or a bunch of pairs. I hesitate to say that there needs to be a theme. I think there needs to be a theme for reasons we'll discuss. But there are anthologies that are just like, here's a bunch of cool comics or cool stories, and like there's no theme or rhyme or reason to them.
Yeah. And, on the Kickstarter platform, I spent some time just taking a quick look. At any given moment, there's, usually at least 9 or 10, if not more, anthology projects in just the comics category alone. And to date, there have been nearly 1,000 anthology projects launched on Kickstarter. But, and some of the biggest Kickstarter projects of all time, anthologies are actually a pretty commonly rank, in projects that do quite well. And I know that can make people think that, oh, well, the secret to having a big Kickstarter is just, hey, I'm just going to launch an anthology. And what the topic that we kind of want to talk about today is how that's actually not, not actually correct, and that there are some problems or some mistakes that people jumping into the comic anthology game are frequently making. And so you sent me over a list of 10. The branding person in me said, all right, let's make these Russell's 10 commandments, and that'll make them even more controversial and exciting, and get some of our audience to maybe hopefully challenge us on some of these and just make a more exciting podcast here. So let's dive into these. All right. Let's start. Give me a commandment. Give me number one on your list of 10.
Okay, I'm going to give you the problem, and then maybe the commandment is how I think I'll make.
Okay.
I'll do this. So the first problem is that creators make anthologies in genres or on themes that they don't plan to write in the near or even long-term future. So I guess the command would be like, thou shalt make anthologies in genres that you are actually writing in currently or in the near term future.
Right. And so why do you think this is a mistake that creators make? Like, why would someone like, because I've seen it too. I've seen it too. But
so
like, why is this so
I'll give
important? And why do you think there might be an allure to like, hey, let's launch this anthology or that anthology, but not have it really related to their.
Yeah, so I think that it's because they see popular things. Then they're like, I see money there. And like,
Yeah.
look, you can make good money on like an anthology that you don't really write on. We talk about Travis Gibb, usually writes in crime, and he did that Cthulhu Invades Wonderland book. And like, he did real well on that book. So like, it's not that you can't, but you want somebody, you're building for the future, for the 3 projects down the road. And so you want to make the people that are going to come to your campaign and back it are going to be people who like that kind of topic. So they're not, if they are writing Lovecraft and they're going, and then you have a crime book, they might not cross over in the same way as if you had a horror book or a fantasy book or a monster book or something like that, or something in the same style. One of the things that we did with the first anthology book that we did, Monsters and Other Scary Shit, is we had Aaron Alexovich do the cover, who did Invader Zim, and then we followed that up with Pixie Dust, which is a very cartoony anime inspired art style, so that people be like, oh, I like this. It's another book, monster book. It's in fantasy. It's not like horror or anything, but like there's zombies in it. There's the art style is very similar. So we able to have a lot of crossover, and actually those two sort of built our career. And you also want to be working in a genre that like you want to continue to work in, because let's say you want to do 2, say you want to do 3, you want to do 4, 5, like, you don't want to be like, oh, I have to turn the entire engine to be like this one horror book that I'm doing, or this one fantasy book when I'm doing romance stuff. You want everything to kind of flow together as much as you can, because the best part about anthologies is you're going to get a lot of new people who like the fandoms of the creators who are in your anthology. And so you want to be like, here is what I've done with these creators, and here is this other thing that I've done with like a nice 1-2 punch, is really the most effective way to use an anthology and build from that big fan base.
Yeah. And I think, what we've seen is that there's a lot of power in that anthology of that an anthology, it may be an easier sell in some cases than when it's built around a topic or around a genre that has bigger appeal than say your cover or your project that you may or may not that people might just not off the top of their heads understand, or know what that is. Yeah. Buddy, daddy's broadcasting. I need you to go downstairs, okay?
Daddy.
Yeah.
I'm hungry.
Okay, go talk to Mama about that, okay?
He's walking the dog.
Okay, then you sit here, wait for her to come back. Yeah, sorry about that. It never ends. So there you have it. Right in a and I'm gonna love Brant editing this out of the thing, and then maybe putting a looper at the end.
It was great to see the door open and me be like, which one is coming in, and then just see the little head like poke around your shoulder. It was nice. I like it. I liked it.
Yeah, he's good. All right, so we've got that one. It's a mistake not to write in an anthology that you want to write in and are going to be, and the power of using an anthology project to set up your next project or your next couple of projects down the line in terms of audience building and targeting. Give me another one.
Okay, number 2. This is my pet peeve, because like I don't intend to make money as the writer of an anthology piece, especially in comics. Like I don't expect to make money. Just like the money, if there is any money, it's going to be very little money, and the money is going to be given to the artist, which I'm fine with. But it makes me very upset when creators do not create some sort of way to build a community around with other anthology creators, because that is why I'm in it. I'm in the anthology mostly to get new fans, yes, but like to meet other creators and find more people to build my network. It's very powerful in that respect. And I would say 90 to 95% of the anthologies that I'm part of do not do anything as far as like relationship building between the people in the anthology. Often I only hear about who's in the anthology when it launches. Sometimes I only hear about the anthology when it launches. So I guess the commandment is thou shalt create a community of anthology creators inside your book.
Yeah, and I know that this is something that you do very well, and something that I'll be honest, when I definitely made this mistake, not taking it to the next level with mine. Like, when I would do anthologies, I would try to create a little bit of community and send updates and emails to rally the group and sort of CC everybody. But I never thought to, let me build a pop-up Facebook group, for the duration of this anthology, from the very beginning. And there's a lot of extra benefits to that. What are some of the extra benefits to building one of these sort of anthology groups?
Sure. So the most important is the people will get behind the anthology. Like the creators are only going to promote as much as they like the anthology. Like you can force them, I quote unquote guess, to like berate them or something to like get them to post one time. But like if you want them to like do the work of promoting the anthology, they have to love the anthology. And in order to love the anthology, they need to like the people who are in the anthology. And generally, I try to give them the anthology a month before we go live so they can read it, pick their favorite stories, geek out about them in the group, because that is the most powerful way to get more people to back the anthology, is if the creators are vehemently pro the anthology, and they will become vehemently pro the anthology by meeting the other people and falling in love with their work and them as people.
Yeah. I think that's actually, a tremendous hit. And, I know from watching some of your anthology groups, just like seeing the work come in reminds the people like, oh yeah, I got to do that, or I got to get this done, or they get excited and you get, your artists trying to one up each other and just bring the A games to when they see good stuff coming in. It definitely is going to make it more top of mind when it comes time to launch that thing and to promote. So that's a great, definitely a great
not only
commandment
that,
there.
Every day for the 30 days or so before the campaign, I post one of the stories in the group and I talk about why I love it so people can see it. Again, like you have to, a lot of people, I don't have this as a commandment, but like it's a subset of this one, is people will turn in their story months, a year before the book is ready. And then they'll be like, oh, that was fun. And then they'll forget. So you have to, by keeping that community going, and especially when the book is coming again, you get them excited again to like do the promotion part, because they already did the major part, which is they got their story in. Like whether they love their story or how they feel about their story, what's going to keep them excited is the other stories that are in there, not even their story. So you have to build that love in them by having that community.
Yeah, and I mean, for the work that we do, as important as marketing is to like the outside world, to the public, right? There's something to be said for the importance of like self-marketing, like keeping yourself excited about a project and keeping your team and everybody on board and excited about it. Like that's also kind of a part of the job and a part of being the cheerleader / cat herder / project manager of one of these larger anthologies. I love that a lot. So, thou shalt create community with the creators that are inside of your anthology. I love that one.
And
now,
it's more than just creating a Facebook group. That's a really important piece to also say, because like a lot of people will make a Facebook group and then do nothing inside of it.
Yeah. That's it. It's like, okay, I did that. And then the group will just populate itself. But that's, your job as the organizer is also to, keep that content rolling and keep and make efforts to engage the people in that community. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, number 3, the problem that you identified here was that a lot of creators don't fill their anthologies with people who create in the genre that they write in, so, to gather the right crowd of readers. So this is, an issue that you're seeing about like the recruitment aspect of anthologies, or you talk a little bit about this.
Sure. So, most anthologies are done by younger creative teams when they're trying to get their feet wet. Not less so by established creators. So when I talk to people, generally it's for people that are like, I haven't broken through. I have a bunch of creators who are friends. Like I have a little bit of fandom, but like I don't know like what to do next. And I'm like, okay, well, you should do an anthology. But to do an anthology, the goal of an anthology is to like build a readership that will follow you for the rest of your career. And in order to do that, you have to attract people who are going to have fandoms that are like yours. So the first anthology that we did, I invited specifically people who made monster stories, fantasy, sci-fi, horror, monster stories, because a lot of our stuff still is monster stuff, even though we mostly do fantasy. Like there's a lot of monsters in our books. Comics especially. So I went to people who specifically did this kind of thing, who said, I write crime, I write fantasy, whatever that is. But like I brought those people in to the anthology with the thought that they would then promote it to their audience who had a similar audience, who had similar likes to the stuff that I did. Now I gathered the 600 people for that first anthology, and I delivered them a book. Like you have to deliver them a good book and all of that stuff, and delivered them more projects. But because I had filled the anthology with creators who worked in the genres that I generally tended towards, those people brought fans that were very similar. And when they promoted the book, it was very easy for those people to promote it to their fandom. They were not promoting something that they didn't do or that there wasn't a big market for.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. I know that there are a lot of creators that when they're organizing their anthology, they kind of like will do an open submission process. So
I think that you need to do both.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
Even with the submission process, you need to say, these are the people that I want. Like even we do open submission, but like I will message hundreds of creators that I know asking them to submit or do something. And a few do. I don't think that you have to like, I also have one of the things about the Cthulhu Anthology brand is that I want to have people that do not work in the Cthulhu in the monster space or the horror space specifically. So like we have people like Kelsey Jo Silva or Angela Odling who like do monster stuff, but like cute monster stuff, or Mary Bellamy who do a very different kind of monster story. So like I'm not saying they all have to be the same tonally or anything like that, but yeah, I think that even if you're doing a open submission, you should still reach out to people who you know are going to deliver.
Right. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. That makes, because one of the most powerful thing about the anthology is that unlike most of our, self-creator and IP, when you look at Kickstarter, it's really just you and maybe your creative team that's putting it. Whereas when you have, dozens of creative teams and dozens of writers and dozens of artists that are all about the book, the chances that they're going to at least give it some promotion on their own channels goes up pretty significantly. And so if they're already speaking to the kind of people that would be into the thing you're making, that's going to make it so much easier to sell.
Two
other things. The first is that they also would more likely to like the anthology, right? Like if they work in the genre, they probably will like the kind of thing that you're making. So like they'll be more likely to be like, yes, I'm really excited about promoting this. But also the fans will start like the fans have multiple points of what they like. So like they have multiple triangulations. And if they start hearing stuff from even in a small area about the same book, and they're like, oh, Kelsey's in it, Angela's in it, Mary's in it, Saxon, all these people, David's in it. Like suddenly that's like, it becomes like, well, now there's like 40 pages of story I really want. Maybe I'm not going to get it if only Mary's in it, but like if there's Mary and like 5 other creators that I love and like 7 that I really want to check out, like now I'm much more likely to do it. So every touch point you get over that first person is more, it makes it more likely that person will back.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. All right. So we're moving along here. this one is always an important thing to me. Titling a book or a project is something that has always been an important thing for me. I've suggested many name changes to creators that have brought books to me. I feel pretty strongly about the importance of a title. What are you seeing with the titles issues?
So the advantage of an anthology is because you're not working in it every day, you don't have to necessarily be beholden to it as your personal work. So like you can do things like fandom, things like Cthulhu or something like that, mythology, that allow you to maybe if your personal work is very focused on like a thing and you're like, I don't want to bring any of this stuff into this thing. An anthology is a way that you can say, well, this is the fandom that I want to serve. We can now we're going to make an anthology about this thing. So the pieces that you name, the name of the anthology does not scream out to the right audience. And what that's about is monsters and other scary shit. It's about monsters and like horror things and like things that go bump in the night. Cthulhu is hard to spell is like right there. The Cthulhu word is the first word. It doesn't say Lovecraft is hard to spell because Cthulhu is the most recognizable brand in that universe. And so you need to basically cut to the brass tacks and tell people what the anthology is about immediately with the title, with like one word. I was part of Caleb Palmquist's Modern Mythology, the first volume, and like I thought it was great. 2 words. It was mythology, and it was updated to modern. I got it right off the bat.
Yeah. Nightmare Theater is another example. Like, okay, horror anthology, you're going to jump in. There was a book a while back. I don't think it ever made it to Kickstarter, but it was always a mass convention seller, and it was called Zombie Bomb, and it was a zombie anthology, right?
Yeah.
Right off the top of the title tells you what it is. And you're right. Sometimes I do see anthology projects with either hard to spell titles that anyone just searching for would know it, or an like a totally original title that is more like but it's not something that people are just like automatically a audience for that.
Sure.
And that
like if I just did Shub Niggurath is hard to spell. It also is true. Or Azathoth is hard to spell, or like whatever they just are not, they're not the brand. Like Cthulhu is the brand. And this is your real chance with an anthology, is to like make a thing that speaks to like the most popular segment of the brand. And whether it's a religious anthology or whatever the brand is, just be like, hey, these people are the people I'm speaking to in the title.
Yeah. I think somebody did a book or a children's book called A is for Azeroth or something like that. But it's like, I'm positive C for Cthulhu outsold them because it is the much more popular character and title and identifiable with the audience that you're trying to speak to. So
yeah, this is one that you can use. This is one you can use Google Trends for, or any sort of like SEO thing. Just be like, okay, I'm going into this thing. I want to go to, and I want to see like, what is the most popular Lovecraft thing? You can literally just have a list and it will show you how popular these things are in the last 30. I mean, don't know why I'm telling you this. I'm telling the audience this, this. You have to an anthology is not your place to be cute. It's your place to gather the most fans that you possibly can for that project. I'm all for personal projects and being cute and precious with stuff. And like, I have plenty of that stuff, but like the anthology is not the place. The anthology is your big hitter that you're putting out there and saying, this is what I do. This is who I want to serve. Everyone who wants that, come to me.
Yeah. Great one. All right. The next one you have is related to page count. And I'm interested to hear your approach and thoughts about this, because this is I think a big decision for anthology creators in terms of how much they're taking on and what the final product's going to look like. But what's the issue in the commandment?
So people are not optimizing page count for the amount of effort that it is to do an anthology. So once you have 10 stories, like, it is not that much extra work to do 30 stories. It's really just like part of it. It's the infrastructure. It's the submissions process. Like, once you've got all of these pieces, like, you don't need to to worry so much about page count except for the price of the actual book at the end. But every creator that's good, not just every creator, but like every creator that fulfills your vision is another creator to do marketing. It's another fandom. It's another fandom that you can that you can target with your marketing. It's another person to like bring onto your team. And I find that most people make anthologies that are way too short. So the commandment, I don't think I've done the actual commandment for the last couple, but like thou shalt optimize page count to get the most backers humanly possible for your book.
Yeah. So this is an interesting one. I think, you said that it doesn't, the difference between 10 stories and 30 is not that big if you have the right infrastructure, and I think that's true. I think you also have the right, I want to say, probably reward structure in place. I know that there's some creators like, I'm doing it like it's a solo anthology right now. George O'Connor is doing a solo anthology that for stories that he and Diana Porter wrote for Toddler Apocalypse, which again, perfect example of a great title that just instantly says what it is and screams out to the right audience. Sci-fi fans with kids, with young kids, perfect, right? But for George, I know he's made a 64-page anthology, but his goals for this was to work with sort of his dream list of artists, and also he wanted to pay them up front, pay their page rate, and so budget was the primary driver of the page count there. And so I guess that would,
the budget is a concern. I will say that most anthologies that I'm part of are some sort of like 10% profit split, 10 to 20% profit split among all the creators. And you do want to be like, you don't want to have 500 pages in a book because that's just too much. And then no one gets anything. But I think that if you say, so for our new goal, it's $30,000 and everyone gets a page rate, like if it funds. So like if it doesn't fund, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I honestly don't know what I'm going to do if it doesn't fund, but I do know that like I looked at it and I said, we had 160 pages or 150 pages or something. I was like, I really want these 30 pages. And I had a big discussion with Chris, who's the co-editor. And I was like, that's a lot of money. Like that's a lot. It's thousands of dollars extra to have these 30 people. And I was like, there are these 30 extra pages. But I said, the entire process of this anthology is to gather as many people as humanly possible. And like, if I think that these fandoms will deliver more backers than they cost, then I will always put them in the book. And because like anthologies may be your baby, but like it's not, I don't expect anyone to be like, this is my number one project of the year. Like this is like the thing that I care the most about, because it's not all of your work. It's a bunch of people's work. Now I'm not saying don't care. Like I love the anthology, but like Ichabod is the comic project that like is like the heart that because I literally have bled this for 11 years. On that project. So if you can make that like the anthology is a vehicle of commerce, mostly is generally a vehicle of commerce, then you can go and say, now I have to maximize this commerce to get as many humans as possible, because what I'm really trying to sell is Ichabod or whatever the thing is, that other project. And I think that for me, at least, when I started thinking about it this way, and this is not like the ideal way to talk about a book that you're bringing out, like in this particular manner. But like I do love the Cthulhu books, and like it's such a joy to be able to make them. But what they are for is to sell Ichabod. That they are to gather humans who will then buy Ichabod for me.
And that, I think that's something that I think most creators that are just jumping into the anthology, like, oh, I got an idea of an anthology, they're not thinking that. Many of them probably haven't been in this game as long as us, where we're like, okay, let me think 3 or 4 times down the line, and it's not a matter of let's just grab any project that sounds good. It's okay, every project that we do has an opportunity cost and has an upside and a downside potential, and so we want to maximize those and make sure that they fit strategically and where we're going to build out our publishing and things. So David Hingley also sort of followed on that. 30 story book costs more than 10. and how would that impact the Kickstarter? A couple things that I would say to that, and this might also be how you're thinking, is like a 30-story book wouldn't necessarily have to be bigger than a 10-story book, depending upon how many pages you're giving each of the creators that are doing the anthology. Would be one thing. And then I also know, just from the publishing standpoint, while the cost of creation, however, if you're paying a page rate, that's going to scale, but the costs don't scale for, say, 100, like a 300-page book is not 3 times more expensive to print or ship than a 100-page book. And so that's where it's actually, the cost is only incrementally more, not 3 times as more. And so what's said of hey, if adding more of these creators is going to overall make the overall pie bigger, then it's worth doing.
Yeah, and part of page count is also how many pages am I going to give each artist. So like if you give everyone 10 pages, you got 100 pages at 10 creators. We do 2, 4, 6, or 8 pages, so we're able to vary the length and also bring in a lot more creators who we want to work with. And sometimes we will go and say, you can't have 8 pages. I'll give you 4 pages. That's all I can give you on this book.
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting option. I think a lot of creators don't necessarily have that in their head. It's like we get very rigid. It's like, oh, here's the structure, it's gonna be this, but having a couple of different variants and being okay with a 2-pager, that's actually going to increase the chances that you get more people, more busy creators to jump in. It's like, oh, well, yeah, I can't do an 8-pager, but 2 pages for Russ, for Russell, for Cthulhu, definitely I'm in.
Yeah, and it also allows you to take on more new creators. In my point of view, like I am not going to give a creator that I do not know very well 8 pages of a book. I just cannot do that without knowing what they're going to deliver. So in the book, Nathan Luth has 8 pages. Who like I've worked with forever. David Pepos has 8 pages, and Nicholas Doan has 8 pages. I think these are the only 3 people who have 8 pages in this book. And like I have worked with all of them or been following their work for like a decade, some of them. So like, and it's similarly people with 6 pages. And that's a lot of people did not apply for 8 pages, because I always say don't apply for 8 pages because you're more likely to get in with 2 pages. But there are so many art styles that like I don't think I can give 8 pages to. Yeah. Like, frankly, I look at it and I'm like, this is too much for 8 pages. It's just too many. It's just too many. We did that in the Monster Anthology. We had some things that I was just like, yeah, 12 pages, whatever. You want 12 pages? Here's 12 pages. Then the stories would come back and I'd be like, oh, I should have given them 4 pages. Like it would have been fine at 4 pages. And that is a way to get both very successful creators who are probably only going to give you 2 pages, and new creators who you want to test out and work with, who like, if the story doesn't come in correctly, like you can be like, I'm going to pay your kill fee because like this is not work. This is not work.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, the next one that you had points out the problem of creators who don't lock down a few big names to help get press coverage. And it's clear that you're passionate about giving young creators, less established creators, a shot for these anthology projects. But from a marketing standpoint, the importance of some established creators coming to the party. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, I try and fill in 10 to 25% with new creators I've never worked with before. But I try to get 2 to 3 creators who like have a name in the press. And it's because even though the book is Cthulhu, nobody cares because it's on Kickstarter. Like if it came into the direct market, there may be a difference, but like press does not care. Press cares about Trina Robbins. They care about Paul Jenkins. They care about Christian Gossett. They care about Ray Anthony Height. Like they care Megan Hutchinson, like who's been in the book. And you don't need like that many creators to be like, hey, Megan Hutchinson has a new story in an anthology, or Trina Robbins is a new story in our anthology, and it's raised $70,000 on Kickstarter so far. Like, do you want to take a look at it? Because what press is looking for always is newsiness. Is how is this relevant to my audience? And you can create newsiness by like hooking your book into like an event or something like that. There's all sorts of ways to like create newsiness, but the easiest way to connect newsiness is to bring on creators who are newsy, who like people want to cover because they get clicks. And again, this book is 180 pages. So I think it's 172 pages of art specifically. And 8 or 10 pages are like those kind of creators. It doesn't take a whole lot, but part of it is for press. The other part that I didn't talk about in this in this bullet is like Paul Jenkins in your book, Trina Robbins in your book. Like suddenly you're like, oh, well, like it's not just a bunch of indie creators. It's like they got some real hitters here. So like I should take this more seriously.
Yeah, and you know, in addition to press coverage, it also is just going to help with even on the recruitment side. You know, who wouldn't want to be in a book with, you know, a few big name creators? So that might turn some lukewarm maybes to hell yes. You know, if you have those big names lined up, and then also, you know, there are those fans, those super fans out there that are literally like, I will buy I will buy some, like they're one of those, you know, 10,000 true fans. Like everything a creator creates or is a part of, they're going to buy one. I actually had, you know, this was a first, but I had a message from someone who is a super fan of metal trading cards produced by the people that we do our metal trading cards thing. And he shot me a message and said, hey, I hear you know, Fairy Metal is doing a line of metal trading cards for you guys. I want to buy them because I buy all of their metal trading cards. And this person, like, that's a classic example of like how working with people that already have fandoms, already have collectors bases, will translate and help off your project. So and it can be unexpected. Yeah,
and on top of that, like it gives you more credibility for the rest of your career as a creator. I know that especially with younger creators, they're not thinking about the long term. But like, you know, you have Lee Cosi on one of your projects, and like you've worked with Lee Cosi for the rest of your life, like who's like a big Disney watercolor artist, and you know you work with Paul Jenkins on a 4-page story, and like you've worked with Paul Jenkins for the rest of your life, and like all of these little, and like you're probably not going to hire Paul Jenkins to like write a comic for you. Maybe you will, Tyler, but like most creators are not going to hire Paul Jenkins to make like a comic for them. But like you could have him do a 4-page story, 2-page story, whatever. Like there are all of these things that sort of build the mythology of you, or like you as a creator, and like being able to put, like, even if it's a couple names. I remember Jack, I think it was Jack. Jack was doing his Why Faith book, and he had Trina in the book. And I was like, oh, well, that's like, I set up, I know Jack. I've known Jack Holder for like a very long time. But even I was like, oh, like, all right, man, like that's a get. Like that's a good get. That person. And I'll be honest, it like made me think better of him as a creator, because he like was able to do this other piece of it. And you're not quite sure if you can, you know, there's a lot of things that work when you're communicating with independent creators that like don't work when you're talking to like established, especially like Marvel and DC creators. And like a lot of people can't make that transition to like be able to work, maybe get a cover, but like to not work on an actual story with somebody like that. Yeah. So by having it doesn't only help the press, but it literally helps the entire mythology of everything.
Absolutely. So the next one you identified, again, also deals with press. What's this next one for our anthology creators up there?
Yeah, they don't do press with their contributors. Thou shalt do press with your contributors and try and get big names on your books. Like those are two very easy ones, because like you've got a list of creators. You've got people that like you can reach out to, and you can say, hey, here's a bunch of creators. Like I can get any of them on your show if you want. Or like, here's some that I'm pitching. We did, you know, other editors, like all sorts of stuff. But like the contributors, like everyone wants to do press, and nobody wants to set up press events. So like if you can just go and say, hey, we're doing this for Chuck. Chuck was like, I don't want you, Russell, but like I'll take I'll do a thing with women in your anthology. I was like, cool. Like I don't need to be there. This is even better. I don't have to be there, and I get like things are going to happen. Yeah. But like all of these things happen, and like there are all these assets that you only have during this launch. Like you only have this launch to to leverage the people in this book. And so, and they won't all say yes. Like, probably if we went to Paul and said, we do this interview, you'd say no. But like, there are people that are going to say, yes, I will do these interviews. And people that will say, I know this reviewer I can get it to. I know this interview. And like, this happens every anthology. Someone will say like, hey, do you want me to, Don Wynn last time did one where he's just like, hey, I booked this interview. Do you want to come on? And I was like, I do want to come on. I do want to come on.
Yeah. And I'm seeing here how these commandments kind of play off one another in a lot of fun ways, because if you've done the earlier commandment of building a community, chances that being able to go into, some of the top women on your anthology and say, hey, this podcast wants to highlight some of the great work by the women creators on this anthology. The fact that have been in a community and maybe have been seeing what the other great projects have been doing, make it more likely to them to be like, yeah, sure, I'll give an hour of my time to go do that. Even though I'm 2 pages in this book, sure, of course. And then also having bigger names makes it easier to then book and makes it more attractive to get them on those other press outlets. So and this is good.
You're trying to build not to mythologize anthologies so much, but they have been so central to my career. Like, building an anthology correctly can literally give you a community that you can work with and help promote and everything, and like just build your career with and like talk to and for like literally the rest of your career. Like, it is, for me, it has been that important and foundational for me. Like, the people I work with almost always have been or will be or in one of our anthologies in the future. And all of these things we're talking about are exactly that. Like, these are things that you'll be able to hit one time, but you'll really be able to hit like over and over and over again. We never thought we would do 4 of these anthologies, like between the monster one and the Cthulhu one. We did it because it was fun, because like it really allowed us to highlight creators we wanted to work with, but maybe after doing that anthology, we're like, yeah, I really want to work with them. Or like, oh, thank God, we only have like 4 pages from this person, which luckily like barely ever happened. But it allowed us to be like this. And now when we have this body of work, we can go back and say, this is like, can we work with you on this project or some other project? And just going through the trenches together on something like this. And especially if it's successful. I will admit, like, the first one we did raised $27,000. So like, it was a lot easier to recruit after that for once we did the big hitter. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like, they all kind of build and they all make the others easier as well. Like, if you do all 10 of them, every one of them will be easier because you'll have a creator network. You'll have people that do press coverage. They'll probably be able to like at least talk about like a big name, or like they'll get excited for the big name that they've always wanted to be in an anthology with, which is another piece of this. Like, all of the people that have been this anthology now, like, are going to have worked with Trina Robbins. And like, that's really like a very cool thing you're delivering to like all of these people who can put on their resume, many of which probably grew up reading her comics and her work.
Yeah, it's tremendous asset. All right, so coming up with 3 more, and this next 2 actually are related to concept of having a marketing plan.
Yeah, the biggest thing that people do when they have a group is they'll come and they'll say, what should we do? What should we do? What should we do? It seems like a natural thing to do, but like, everyone's like, I don't know, you're the editor. Like, just tell me what to do. Like, I'll do it. Just tell me what to do. And like, I will help you fulfill your vision. But please do not come here asking me what to do. Cause like, I just contributed 4, 5, 2 pages to this book. Like I'll be on shows, but like, I'm not going to help you build this marketing plan. And so probably the biggest mistake, if you have a genre, if you've done most of these things or you think you've done them, probably the thing that you are missing on is you do not have a solid marketing plan or the process by which to share it with people to implement it. And it's the thing that will like turn around a lot of campaigns. Like I was like, there's the first 3 days of the anthology. Every day in Anthologies Live, I do I tag everyone in a post for where we are. But the first 3 days, I'm like, what I want from you is the first 3 days. 1, a post that says it's live. 2, a post that says why your story is awesome. And day 3, a post that says that takes your favorite story and tells you why, and tells that people why it's awesome. Like the 3 posts, it'll take you 15 minutes to do. You have all of the assets in the folder that I gave you. Just like do those 3 things. And then one day during the middle of the campaign, say something nice. And then the last couple of days, tell people it's closing. Like, it's not like a massively complicated marketing plan, but like people can say, and which is good because people can then say, oh, that's not very much work. Like, sure, I can write a post about like my story. That seems easy. Yes, I can share a post about like the thing being live. Like, these are pretty slow asks, and they're done in a way that like people say, this is what we do today. This is what we do tomorrow. This is what we do the next day. And then like I basically can do nothing for 20 days or whatever until the end. And then I have to say the book's coming to an end. Well, I'm probably going to do that, right? I'm probably going to do that when the book is over. Like every creator probably will like share a post or something, the thing's done in the last couple of days. What you're doing is you're just standardizing it across everyone. You're telling them what to expect. You're telling them what you want to do. Then you are telling them to do it. Then you're telling them what you have just done. And it is incredible how the uptake goes on these things. If you can just tell people what you want them to do and have a plan and lead. I mean, being an anthology editor is about leading. Like you're doing some like editing work. I mean, you're doing some editing work, but like each story gets a very little massaging from you if they get anything. Most of the stories just come in and you're like, awesome, thank you. That's great. I appreciate it. What you're doing is you're combining them all together in a pleasing thing. And you have, and then you are delivering it to everyone. So people are trusting, the creators are trusting that the other creators you choose are going to be good. And like be worthy. And then the fans are saying your taste is going to be good to get this thing in my hand. And like I've had to pull back on a lot of my anthologies because for people violating one of those 2 things, but also for just saying like, okay, what do I promote? Like, what is the blog line of this thing? Like, what is the blurb that you want me to share? Like, what is the best marketing copy? Like, give me some examples of marketing copy. Like, anything, like give me some direction, because I'm not going to go and write my own marketing copy for this book that I've only got 2 pages in and then read through really quickly.
Yeah. So, I mean, as you laid it out here, though, I think sometimes when creators hear marketing plan, they get like overwhelmed. But really, what you're saying is like, here's how I want, here's what I want shared when, by whom. That a marketing plan can be as simple as that. And then
to me, that is a marketing plan. It's just sometimes there's a lot more people involved and stuff. Right. I'm working with Kat from to do some press, to get press stuff, and like the stuff we're doing is way more complicated than that stuff. But like it's still just a marketing plan. It's just more complex marketing plan.
But the importance of then needing to like I do hear sour grapes occasionally from creators that like have a project, and whether it's their own project or an anthology project, but there's a little bit of sour grapes. Is like, my collaborators just didn't share this thing, and ultimately it always has to fall back to is did you lead them to share? You are the leader of this in all aspects. Did you make it easy for them to share? Did you follow up? Did you send reminders? Did you provide templates? Did you provide specific, easy, actionable calls to action for them? Because if you didn't do all of it, go ahead.
Yeah, and then also, like, was the thing that you were asking them equivalent to how much you paid them? Because that is a big thing. Like, people often, I hear from young creators want a creator to be like sharing every day of a Kickstarter campaign. And she's like, you paid him like you didn't pay him $500 a day. Like you paid him like, you paid him $100, $200 for like the work. You didn't pay him with the expectation that he was going to promote. So he's done the work. So like, I'm not saying that they shouldn't promote some, like they should promote some, but you still have to have your expectations reasonable for that,
Now, question to you, and I know, when working with creators on these, you put together a contract and lay things out in front. Are these expectations these marketing expectations, something that you would recommend putting up front, like at the beginning, like when you're taking applications or things like that, to make it clear, when this launch is live, here's what we're hoping to or expecting from the creators that are a part of this?
I put a little bullet point that says, we expect you to promote during this anthology. But honestly, my asks have gotten way smaller over the time, which is, in fact, in this one, what I said in the email that I sent about this was like, I appreciate everything you've done. Like you could literally do nothing, like, and you'd be like a hero to me. Like you made this thing happen. It's great. If you would like to promote, like these are what I have found to be the most effective things that you can do. I hope you do all of them, or some of them. I will remind you about what to do, but like you have done so much already. And so I've tended throughout my career to take a lesser and lesser approach to like expecting what people are going to do. Yeah. And then knowing that some people are going to run with the ball. Like some people are going to like go way far and beyond. And some people are going to like take it and like they'll get whatever first down or a base hit or whatever your metaphor is. And also not every promoting is the same. I was part of an anthology and someone was like messaging every single person that she knew to back this anthology. And like, it was exhausting. I'm not going to talk about the ethical ramifications of that. Just, it seemed exhausting. Yeah. But like I sent an email to like the 10,000 people on my email list. Like she contacted 2 people. I contacted 10,000 people. She did 50 times the work I did. But like, I still reached at the end of the day, multiple people like who were like way more people than that person did. And I'm not discounting either of them, but you also have to think like, each person might have similarly contributed to funds, but the time commitment to each thing is far less.
Right. And and I think the other thing that creators have to be aware of is that even if this is your first anthology project, you may be the most savvy marketer on your whole team. And so, to assume that other creators are going to know how to market, if you just leave that to chance and don't, give them the templates or give them the, hey, today is share your favorite other story that somebody else wrote, and why, you may find that they're out there doing things like passing out flyers at church or texting frantically their entire family, and it's like, that's maybe not be the most best use of your time during this.
And also, yes, yeah, absolutely. And most comic creators have no idea how to market. Most successful creators that I've met have no idea how to market. They have no idea how they get the sales that they do. They just like put a thing on Kickstarter and then money happens, or they go to a show and like people come up and buy it. Like very rarely does someone actually understand the mechanics of like how to do marketing and what effective marketing is. And I just think about some of these people and I'm like, my God, like if they just knew how to market, they'd be making quadruple what they are now. And they're making so much money. So like even the best ones like barely have a mailing list. Like they barely like know how to reach out to people. Like they don't understand the function of like making a sales letter or any of that stuff. So by giving them tools, you also are helping them in the future. Like I've seen so many people copy the format that I use for the anthologies in the groups. And like, it's fine. Like some people have figured it out on their own, but like some of them I'm like, well, you got this from me. And that's great because like now you figured out how to do it, like by being part of the group. and or they've taken the course that I have, which is available during the campaign about the anthologies. Whatever it is, they have figured out how to market better, and like that to me is the goal. I mean, I know I said earlier that the goal is like to get as many backers as possible, and like that is true. Not every campaign that I have is like maximize backers. Like Ichabod's not really maximize backers because it's like a weird book about weird people, and like I don't think like it's done in the style that's going to maximize like the most amount of backers. But Cthulhu is made to maximize backers, and but aside from that, it's made to like create a community of creators who are all on the same mission together and all have the same and all speak the same dialect of the same language.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's so fascinating because I think your approach is definitely, you know, a lot of creators, they look at the Kickstarter number that it puts up, or let me just have a book that's going to sell. But there's, you know, so much more to what the value that an anthology can bring a creator and a project organizer, and either of those two things. And you've really been stressing a lot of those. So this sort of brings us full circle to your final commandment and your final problem that you see creators have. But this sort of kind of sums it up and is a great way to leave things. Share the last thing that you have.
Thou shalt plan to leverage the next project during the current before you even start the current project, really. So the problem is that people run an anthology campaign and don't think about the next thing that they're going to offer these people or the thing before it. And people often come back to, like, I've been pretty successful for a pretty long time. Like my big hit was the anthology Monsters and Other Scary Shit. In 2017, we raised $27,000. People don't, it's like in August of the previous year, I raised $1,800 from like 70 backers. Like my biggest book before that didn't even break 300 backers, and it was 2015 all the way. So over almost 2 years beforehand. So like this was not a guarantee that like it was going to be like a thing that was sustainable.
Right.
I made some assumptions, which was like, if I get a cover by Aaron Alexovich, it's really cool and it glows in the dark, and like we fill it with a bunch of creators and like we're all on the same path together, like it's going to go well, and it did go well. But I could have run Pixie Dust first. For those of you who don't know Pixie Dust, please don't fall. Pixie Dust is this book.
Yeah,
it's a square book done in a very animation art style. And this is the cover of Monsters and Other Scary Shit. Like, I could have run this book and then the monster book.
Right.
But I chose, partially because Nick hurt his hand, but also because of just life, that like running the monster anthology to maximize the people who would come through and then back the Pixie Dust book would be the better move. And I doubt I probably would have hit 500 backers on the Pixie Dust book, but because the Cthulhu book, because the monster book was so successful, we then could come back and say, here is another thing. And we literally delivered the monster book, and we went right into production and 2 weeks later, or a month later, we were in where we did the campaign for Pixie Dust. People just got it, they read it, they were excited. Then they backed that book, did $25,000. Again, my previous best was $8,000, $8,700. There's a lot, but it's not $25,000.
Right.
And then,
and so what was cool is, you know, you had a breakout hit with the anthology that, you know, was $27,000. Your next book was not an anthology, but was a perfect kind of, if you like monsters and other scary stuff, you will like this book. And now you're selling it to a much bigger customer base that it's supported you. And so that project did similar numbers.
And on top of that, the art style of the book. So my story was first in the Monster Anthology. And if you can see the art style of it is very similar to that Cthulhu, to the book. It's also an epic fantasy story. Mm-hmm. So if people are like, got this, read the first story and said, I like how he does epic fantasy. Suddenly they're like, well, here's an epic fantasy graphic novel you can try. And then we were off to the races.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, Any other creators that you've seen have done this well, from anthologies to what they do?
I think Pat Shand did it really well when he did Thirst 2 Christmases ago. He
Okay.
did. He was already pretty successful as a creator with Destiny New York, but then he did. I think it was called Thirst. It was like a sexy comic, like erotic comic, and like since then he's gone from making like 20,000 to between 30 and 40,000, leveraging that same network.
Yeah.
With very similar artists. I mean, Destiny New York is not like a sexy book, but there is nudity in it. So, but he was able to have that crossover. So it's not something you have to do. That you have to do like the immediate thing. Like you can do it now. I think that what ends up happening with 99% of creators is that they do the anthology without thinking about what the next project is going to be or what the last project is. So like, if I had a project that was, let's say, a middling hit, I did an anthology, I want volume 2 of that hit so people could buy 1 and 2 to happen within 6 months of shipping, really within a couple months of shipping that anthology once it comes out. And I mean, one thing we didn't put on there is that the end, when you get the hardcover book, like it's a banger. Like it sits on your it's 224 pages, like it glows in the dark. So like one thing that I also see is people will ship it in the anthology and it will be like on bad paper stock, or it'll be small, it'll be like unimpressive. Like you have to make it impressive because you're trying to impress on them that they should follow the rest of your career from now and into the future.
Yeah. I mean, you can't forget that last interaction, which when the project shows up, you want that to actually be the thing that really, sets the stage and blows them away.
And I don't think that Monsters and Other Scary Shit is that great an anthology. Like, I'm very proud of it that it did it, but like the reason we did Cthulhu was because like I was like, oh man, I made a lot of mistakes in this anthology. Yeah. Like I still love it, but like it's uneven, it's black and white in color, there's prose and comments, all sorts of things that people complain about with that book. Not the least of which is that we had to rip and replace 1,500 covers. So like the covers sometimes fall off. Like I'm very blessed with that book. But we did the Cthulhu book because I was like, let me take what I learned here and make like something that like, it wasn't all ages. So like most kids, most anthologies are bought by families. So like having blood and like cursing and stuff in a book really hampered who could buy that monsters book, and it said shit right in the title. So like you couldn't really, people knew it wasn't a kid's book already. So there's all these
couldn't
things.
Put up a huge sign that to advertise. Yeah,
exactly. But like I say that to say like it wasn't it wasn't anywhere near the Cthulhu books that I make now, but it still did well. Like it still was successful, and we were able to deliver like a hardcover edition of that book that was beautiful. And then people were like, oh, like I should take this person seriously.
Yeah.
All of the stories are good. This creator is like, it has taste, even if he's like not doing this anthology correctly yet. And that is why I think they gave me a chance on the other book, because I made the story in Monsters very similar in tone and theme to the Pixie Dust book. And like, even with the same artist. And then I delivered the monster book very impressively. I mean, I still think that glow in the dark cover eyes is like one of the best covers I've ever seen. And then delivered the other thing, and being able to think about that is so critically important about the steps of how you're going to deliver all of these things and build that massive, because it's going to be the biggest book you ever did. Like almost 99.9% of the time, I've never seen a creator who didn't have their most backers on the anthology book that they did. Never seen it.
Yeah, it's that for all the reasons that we mentioned, they can be big, massive hits if you do them right, if you follow these commandments. So this has been great, Russell. This is just a ton of knowledge and a little bit of a anthology mini masterclass right here. I do know, and I saw that for you've got the third book, which is coming out in very shortly. But this is actually going to be the end of your run on the Cthulhu is Hard to Spell anthologies. And I know that this is something that you decided that this is the end of it. And so, one of the questions that I'll ask and sort of end on here is, why, as something that has been, one of your biggest successes so far, like why you're letting it go? Why time to pass the torch or move on from it? And what are some things that just, maybe the knowing when it's time to let go of something that has been a big success, I think is something that can be hard for a lot of creators.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is just I believe things should end. Like I believe that like comics should end, and I definitely believe my own books should end, because I think that when you don't end a story, then you are doing a disservice to your fans. You're just doing a service to the people that are waiting. And so and I have taken it to the maximum length that I am able to take it. Ichabod is similarly. I'm ending Ichabod in September, which was my biggest comic project. I'm ending the Godsverse Chronicles, which was the biggest novel project, in June. So like this is a year of ending. And did you ever watch The Good Place?
Yes, I did not finish it though.
So at the end of The Good Place, yeah, people talk about this feeling of like it's time, and like I think that for me, a year ago, it just was like it is time. I've done what I have done on this book. Like I'm not an editor. Like I may be a good editor, but like I'm not an editor. Like I'm a creator. I think the reason why if my books have had success, if the anthologies have had success, it's because like I bring a creator's mindset to it. And like the reason why we're able to do the groups and all of this stuff is specifically because I was like, I want to hang out with other creators. Like that's what my whole life. I just want to hang out with other creators. So with the Cthulhu one, it was easy. I had a trilogy. I had it. The first one was planning to invade. The second one was invading. The third is the mythological gods and heroes of old banding together to try and fight off the Lovecraft gods. Like that was very easy to be like, I didn't think we were going to get to 3 after 2 barely funded 2 years ago. But really when the 2 ended, I was like, I had a pretty bitter taste in my mouth because it like had like 250 fewer backers and it raised almost 10 grand less. Like it was really like hard for me to be like, oh, what's even the point of like, if you can't predict a book is going to be more successful if you're doing marketing, like what's even the point of continuing to do it? But I had told people that if it hit 30 grand, I would then do a 3rd volume so people could close it out. And I told people 2 years ago, I said, it will be the closeout book. So plan and many of the stories a couple of the stories were 1, 2, 3. Like they were made in like stages. So I wanted to give people the ability to send it off. But I mean, for the Cthulhu brand, like, and Chris got a job as an editor and she can't do a lot of things anymore. So I was like, oh, you can't do a thing. Like I want to get back into like more creating stuff than editing. So like, let's just make this like the end. But it's I don't fear the unknown of like most people do. Like I think that people are going to grok what I put out or they're not. I've had a career at this point that spans audio dramas and novels and multiple different genres. And like I found just like people, especially on Kickstarter, tend to support the stuff. And like that's what I care about is like making good experiences for them. But I do think about the amount of people who don't buy a series when it's in the middle. Like you tend to get a big boost at the beginning and a big boost at the end because it's complete. So I tend to work in 3 or 4 book arcs, and you have to think when you think like that, am I ready to do 4 more books? Am I ready to spend the next 5 years? So the thing that I ask myself whenever I'm taking on a new project is, am I willing to spend the next 10 years of my life talking about this book or talking about this project? And I'm about to turn 40, which is probably the biggest reason. And I want to end the things that I started in my 30s. I don't think people ever get a chance to do this, to like end on their terms. Very rarely do people are able to say, this is what I accomplished in a decade of my life. This is like how I felt about it, but I'm going to feel, I feel differently now about life than I did 10 years ago or 5 years ago, or even 2 years ago. You know, I've been chronically ill, and it's been getting worse over the years. And like my desire and ability to do things has decreased over those years. And I think it gives me a different perspective. Like I'm not quite the aggressive, like, human that I was. I mean, I don't know. You said you're reading Dragonstripe. I think it reads very differently than my previous work as far as like tone and pacing goes. And so for me, it was a combination of all of those things. Like I believe in milestones. I believe in ending things, and I believe that like I want to go out like on my own terms. And like I frankly don't know if I'm going to last like long enough to like do another arc. So like I want to go out on my own terms, and if I get to do more, then like that would just be a wonderful surprise, and I'll do other stuff.
Yeah, it's an interesting approach. And yeah, the 40 milestone seems like a big milestone until you hit it, and then you sort of recalibrate. But
it's just like, you know, we had the pandemic. And like we like life changed, and like I feel like I changed during that time. And it just so happens that like if like the pandemic didn't happen, I was still doing shows and stuff, like we'd probably be having a very different conversation right now. I'd be like doing the 4th volume or like something, or like there'd be some other thing that I was doing. But because like the pandemic happened, my like life changed, and then 40 as well. Like it's kind of like things, I don't know, things sync up in that, in that way.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, as someone that is a planner and strategy and everything, there's also something just said to go with your gut, go with your intuition, and go and you know, don't force things when they're, you know, the resistance feels like, you know, it's a little bit different this time. And so, you know, I applaud you for doing that.
Well, and also like it's not the end. Like I'm 40. Like you can always. The great thing about having a body of work is like I could come back in 5 years and be like, no, I want to do more Ichabod. Like I want to do this stuff. And like part of me wants to move away from like doing comics at all, and then have one of those like 5 years from now, someone's like, he hasn't done a comic in 5 years. Like he's gonna do a thing. Like look at this thing, and like then come back like in some big spectacular fashion at that point. But yeah. Nice. But yeah, I mean, I try to remember that like I'm only 40. I in a good life have 40 years left, and like which is more time left than like I've made it. So like, you know, you can always come back to things that you love. And it's if you're starting to feel burnt out by it, you should almost always walk away.
Yeah, good piece of advice, and one that's hard for creators, but definitely with age comes wisdom, I guess, and soreness for simple things like shoveling the snow, which I had to do earlier today, and break up some ice. But well, we're going a little bit long. I did see a great question from someone watching on Facebook that asked about how to attract bigger names when you're probably someone they've never heard of. But what I actually am going to direct that user to is to the latest episode of the Comics Launch podcast with George O'Connor. George actually was able to get, you know, his dream team of just about all working pros, and he shared a really good strategy for that. So that episode and then this episode with Russell are going to make, you know, really a strong comic book anthology thing. It's a strong comic anthology sort of series. Or mini series on the Comics Launch podcast. So please check that out. Russell,
I do have one quick thing to say about that is like you can hire an editor who is more popular than who like already has connections. Like I hired Chris because she worked at Image and she got my vision, and like she brought in a lot of talent that I would not have had access to. So like you can do that as well.
That's a great tip, and not one that I would have thought of. So thanks for sharing that. All right, Russell. So one last plug for the big anthology that's coming up this month. And then, you know, anything, where are you directing people to follow you most these days on the interwebs?
Sure. CthulhuIsHardToSpell.com. You can check out the pre-launch page. The easiest thing to do is join our mailing list at RussellNohelty.com. You'll get a free book for doing so. And then you actually get access when I send emails instead of having algorithms throttle you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Russell, for your time and for your talent, and for all these great conversations that we had over the years and again today. I hope you have a great rest of the day.
You too. Thanks for having me.
And everyone watching at home, hope you got some value from this. Hope to see your anthologies launching on Kickstarter sooner rather than later. And we can't wait to see what you launch next. Take care, everybody.